Hello, hello, hello. I was looking for the microphone there. Where the hell was it? Back there. How's everybody doing there? I tell you what, very interesting time to be alive, to say the least. Anyway, let's start out with an indoor air quality audit, indoor air quality story here. And this there's a fad every about 10 or 15 years. I believe it's called the catabolic diet, where it takes more energy. Well, the theory is it takes more energy to digest the food than you can get out of the food, and therefore it's catabolic. I don't know. I think that's what it's called. I'm not a dietitian. I'm not playing one here on Safety Wars. If I was, my life would be a whole lot differently right now. And more on that at a more appropriate time. Solemn day for me personally here. It's 4 years since my father, Walter Polzel, passed away, and I was thinking about him today. On a positive note, I wanted to wish my Aunt Sophie a happy 90th birthday. She's going to be 90 tomorrow. She's at the Felician University in New Jersey, in Lodi, on their Lodi campus. And she's been there for about 70 years. So you could do the math there. Back in the day, they let people in the convent early and different time. But anyway, she is going to be 90 tomorrow. And yes, she does have a Safety Wars sports jersey in brown, because they're only allowed to wear brown. So the nuns got a big kick out of it. Anyway, they also wait until they see the jersey I wear tomorrow. I got a Hawaiian themed one. Anyway, so here we go. This is right out of Wall Street Journal, and this is how far we have fallen here. And just to say something else, we're going to be going into the Titan Submersible because it's been 3 years since that situation happened. Canada released a report on that today also, with some information we could use here if in your health and safety pursuits. And there's a familiar name that is quoted in there. That should be familiar, at least if you're listening to the Safety FM network. Now, here is out of the Wall Street Journal and Lifestyle and Fitness section. And it's about an indoor air quality situation in the White House. Everyone in Trump's cabinet is eating sauerkraut. J.D. Vance, RFK Jr., no surprise at RFK Jr., and other officials swear by a diet of grass-fed meat and fermented foods, even when the sulfurous odors can cause friction at home. Hold on. Allergies are killing me here. Ay. I'm outdoors all day, so no big surprise. When I get back to the hotel, this is what it is. A new diet. This is really not a new diet here. A new diet is sweeping through President Trump's cabinet and involves heaping portions of sauerkraut. Health Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr., Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick, Transportation Secretary Sean Duffy. He may be harnessing, the after effects of this as a new energy source, is my understanding. And Vice President J.D. Vance have all embraced the diet drawn by the promise of slimmer waistlines and glowing skin. They all apparently have determined that the health benefits outweigh the slightly sulfurous odors having caused of some domestic friction. Within 30 days, I lost 20 pounds, Kennedy said. I don't think the man... Did you see the man with that shirt off? Is like the ultimate man crush. I hope I'm looking that good at 70-some years old. Kennedy said at an event in Michigan this week, J.D. Vance is also on the diet. You can see how different he looks. Diet is the brainchild of Dr. Sean O'Mara, who advises his high-profile patients eat fermented foods such as sauerkraut and kimchi, alongside with grass-fed steak, to abstain from alcohol and sugary food. Amara says the diet leads to a reduction in visceral fat, which wraps around the organs, as well as more robust microbiome, which can help with digestion. Kennedy, 72, was the first to convert. Alutnik, 64, Duffy, 54, followed suit. Vance, 41, committed to the diet for Lent earlier this year, has stuck with it. I tend to like to work with older people because the return on investment is so much greater. It's like taking over a sinking ship. A company that is headed to bankruptcy, Amara said. He declined to discuss his patients, citing privacy concerns, but people familiar with the matter said Kennedy, Letnick, and Duffy, and everybody else is on it. Kennedy began the diet about a year ago after meeting O'Mara. Though he is sometimes turned off by the tangy and pungent taste of sauerkraut, he found the diet that has helped him shed fat, reduce aches and pains. He credits it with eliminating the arterial fibrillations he has been experiencing. Trump administration diets on the diet have been known to trade tips on when they are gathered at the White House. Sideline commentators usually remarked that Vance was looking so thin earlier. Trump has at times resisted cutting out unhealthy foods, but at the NBA Finals earlier this month, he munched on pizza and french fries and dry Diet Coke. He loves a well-done steak with ketchup. Trump's campaign frequently stocked McDonald's cheeseburgers and Chick-fil-A sandwiches. I mean, this is, like I said, this is like every 15 years or so, this happens. Well, then it was the cabbage soup diet. I remember that back in the 90s. And that's all that the people would eat is cabbage soup. All right? And then, they're like in misery for like a month, and then they can't keep that up because they get sick of it. Because what's fermented food, my understanding is just pre-digested, just like cooking does, pre-digest food. Now, if you listen to last night's program, and it should be uploaded by now, we went like an hour and a half or so. We talked about a lot of things on there. The reason why is that I knew that tonight I wanted to get away from the news, and I wanted to talk about some other news, but talk about this Titan Submersible thing. It's been a good long time since we discussed it. The Canadian report came out. The report from the Canadian investigators, Coast Guard came back out in 2025. With this, the Canadian report appears, and I just scanned through it real quick, appears to be less critical than the U.S. report. Sorry, folks. I should be sounding a lot better now. Had it on the webcam, and the mixer board gives me the headphones, and then on the webcam it tells me something else. So you'll be confused tonight, I guess. All right, let's head on over. We're going to do FSN radio news, and we'll go from there. Yes, we're going to rerun everything ourselves here.
From Feature Story News in Washington, I'm Kate Fisher. The White House has defended concessions made in the interim Iran peace deal. Under the terms, Washington would immediately waive oil sanctions on Iran, a concession that goes further than the 2015 nuclear deal signed under President Barack Obama. Nick Harper reports from Washington.
In terms of what else is laid out in this deal, we know that now the US and Iran are pledging mutual respect for sovereignty, so they are saying they will no longer attack one another. There will be a joint mechanism to make sure that what's been agreed in this text is actually implemented. And amongst that, the US military will be remaining in place, really as leverage to make sure that the Iranians are on side during the next 60 days. Also, the US is permitting Iranian oil exports under certain waivers, and some of those Iranian frozen funds and assets, they will be partially unfrozen.
US Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth has announced a Pentagon review of American forces in Europe. Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky also attended the meeting of defense ministers in Brussels, pressing allies for additional air defense systems after another Russian strike on the city of Sumy. Will Denslow reports from Brussels.
He met last night with Mark Rutte, the NATO Secretary General. He had a meeting with NATO's defence ministers to discuss continued support. This comes as Mark Rutte estimates that Russia is losing upwards of 35,000 forces each and every month. He says that is signs that Ukraine is in a strong position on the battlefield, but says yet more support is needed. Also calls for more support to defend Ukraine's skies. There's overnight another strike on the Ukrainian city of Sumy.
New York City became a sea of bright orange and blue on Thursday morning as millions of basketball fans descended on Lower Manhattan to celebrate the New York Knicks. The city's basketball team won its first national championship in 53 years last weekend, prompting wild celebrations throughout the 5 boroughs. From New York, Mitch McCann reports.
The parade, announced by the city's mayor, Zohran Mamdani, shortly after the Knicks' victory, was in the planning before the final match and will see 10,000 police officers on the streets during the parade. According to reports, they will include officers from heavy weapons teams, explosive detection dogs, and members of the transit, highway and aviation units. The Knicks will travel up 17 blocks through Lower Manhattan, including a route near City Hall called the Canyon of Heroes, before taking part in a ceremony where they'll be presented with a key to the city. It's reported that the Knicks have also accepted an invitation to the White House, where they'll meet with the president, the first NBA team to do so during Donald Trump's tenure. Mitch McCann, New York.
From bureaus worldwide, this is FSN.
With FSN Spotlight, I'm Simon Marks, looking in more detail today at the ceasefire extension agreement that Iran and the US have now signed. It is going into effect immediately. But is it worth the paper it's printed on? Leon Panetta is a former US Defense Secretary and veteran of the Clinton and Obama administrations.
The good news is the straits are open and that the ceasefire is going to be extended for 60 days. The bad news is that we've virtually given Iran total control of the Straits of Hormuz, which gives them a tremendous amount of leverage and a tremendous influence in the Middle East for the future. Secondly, Israel is not part of this agreement. And if they're not part of this agreement, I'm not sure you can hold a ceasefire together. And lastly, all of these other issues are going to have to be dealt with in 60 days of negotiation. That's a very short time frame in order to resolve particularly the nuclear issues, which demand a tremendous amount of very complex approaches in order to guarantee that they do not achieve a bomb.
Some top Republicans are giving the deal the thumbs down. Senator Ted Cruz of Texas faulted it for giving billions of dollars to theocratic lunatics who want to murder Americans. But Vice President J.D. Vance said it will create a safer, more prosperous world. With FSN Spotlight, I'm Simon Marks.
Our main news again. The White House has defended concessions it's made in the interim Iran peace deal. Under the terms, Washington would immediately waive oil sanctions on Iran. US Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth has announced a Pentagon review of American forces in Europe. And New York City has become a sea of bright orange and blue as millions of basketball fans descended on Lower Manhattan to celebrate the New York Knicks. And that's the latest feature story news. Kate Fisher reporting.
Thank you, Kate Fisher. A lot, like I said before, and I hope this is sounding a lot better now for you. We're ahead on a lot of this stuff because that's just the way the timing works out. Is that we're ahead because the stuff gets released at the end of the day. The other programs are on in the morning. We're on in the evening. So if there's something new to talk about, we're going to do that. Now. What else are we going to talk about? Anything interesting there? Yes. Today was the New York Knicks ticker tape parade, and I wanted to say congratulations to New York Knicks. Something else I'm going to point out here is, hold on, I have his name, and it's make sure I don't get his name wrong here. I've been following this person's career on and off for a while here, and it's NBA, and this came out. Congratulations to 6-time NBA All-Star, 3-time All-NBA selection, and graduate of my own alma mater, St. Joe's High School in Metuchen, New Jersey. Karl Anthony Towns on helping lead the New York Knicks to their first NBA championship since 1973. Before becoming one of NBA's biggest stars, Karl Anthony Towns proudly wore the St. Joe's uniform here in Metuchen. His remarkable journey from NBA champion is a source of pride of the entire Falcon community and for the many residents who have followed his career over the years. Anyway, something I want to point out to you here with him, where was he from? I believe he was from the Dominican Republic, was it? Or Jamaica, one of those countries. Let me see here if they will say where he's from. Boom. So what happened was he was Dominican, that's it. So he had an African-American father, Karl Towns, and a Dominican mother, Jacqueline Cruz. Now, what happened was he went, and I believe he was on the Olympic team for the Dominican Republic. All right. For the 2012 Olympics, it was. And he went and he practiced with them. All right. He was on the Puerto Rico national team. He was on the Dominican Republic team also. And it was like so in high school, if you're going to be a really good athlete, in my experience, it's a 2-year deal. It's like 2 seasons that are very important, regardless of what your sports are, where you have to get developed. And he fortunately got to play with the Dominican Republic basketball team. And okay, they didn't medal in that Olympics, but just by playing with them and playing at a much higher level, he came back and he was like, what can I say? He was on fire ever since then. He was a good player. Would have probably made the NBA, but once he went to that, he became a phenomenal player. How do I know this? One of my coworkers, his son, went to St. Joe's at the same time I did, and he, and I followed his career then, right, and then in that time frame, pretty closely because I had no choice because this guy kept on talking him up, every chance he could. He said, "Watch that guy." Now, what's my point here? How does this relate to safety? If you're a safety professional, right, and you're coming up, you're developing, you have to go and you have to up your game and be with people who are smarter than you. Be with people more experienced than you. Positive people. You don't want to surround yourself with stupidity and idiocy and bitterness. You want to surround yourself with other people so they can elevate you. And that's what the whole idea is that I know this, I know that's what he did. Now, based on what I remember, right, I'm hearing people. So he surrounded himself with a very positive school, St. Joe's Metuchen for sports, phenomenal sport. No, I played for them and went on to a successful Division III career. But that's basically what he came down to. Is so surround yourself with positive people and champions. Now, how does that relate to the Titan Submersible? Let's do a share screen here. And one of these days, I have to do a complete case study on this. This is like the guy, Nippon something or other. He does it on the... he does does classes and stuff on that famous shipwreck in the Mediterranean there, probably a few years back. And he does all these classes and everything else. And he says, well, things are not exactly as they seem, was what it came down to. So here we're going to go, and let's remember, this was here, right? Preliminary statement, this marine casualty investigation was conducted and this report was submitted. And they give you, this is the U.S. Coast Guard report of June 18th, came out in 2024. lists all of the people involved and some of the background. So basically, when you're going to be issuing an accident report, you want to issue through your regulations who was on that accident and report investigation, what their qualifications are, and things of that nature. Especially if you think there's going to be litigation somewhere down the line with something, or this is going to be followed up. And now you have here the vessel involved in the incident, the Ocean Gate Titan here. All those statistics on that, right? And now the deceased. Now you have Richard Stockton Rush III. He was the chief pilot, chief executive officer, and secretary of Ocean Gate's board of directors. Then you have Paul Henry Nargeolet. He was a content expert from France. Shahzada Dawood, passenger mission specialist. Suleiman Dawood, that was his son, passenger mission specialist. And Hamish Harding, passenger mission specialist. Now you're going to say, well, Jim, why are you mentioning this? Okay, real simple reason why we are mentioning this. If this were a passenger vessel, this would have been managed totally different. They would have never gotten certified to have passengers on here. But that's not what they did. They skirted the regulations around, and they said, they, meaning Richard Stockton Rush and the company, right? They, Ocean Gate, they said, we're not going to have passengers, we're going to have researchers. So they felt that they could skate around the law, but obviously they're not going to skate around safety. So here's the incident. You're right, that was one of the findings. The Ocean Gate Expeditions advertised missions aboard the submersible vessel Titan to experience a rare view on the legendary Royal Mail steamer RMS Titanic wreck site. Ocean Gate Expeditions promoted the missions as a longitudinal survey to collect images, videos, and laser and sonar data, determine an assessment and the rate of the decay. The 2023 Titanic expedition was advertised as 5 separate missions, each lasting approximately 8 to 10 days. Passengers were provided an opportunity to act as mission specialists, whose training and fees supported the missions. The missions would depart from St. John's, Newfoundland, and Labrador, Canada, St. John's, aboard a support vessel for the approximately 370 nautical mile transit to the Titanic wreck site. And, right, and then they cover it later. So there's a map of the area from Titanic to St. John's, and back and forth. Goes through some of its stuff here, some of its construction, and basically that it was an undocumented, unregistered, non-certified, unclassed 22-foot manned commercial watercraft. The pressure hull was approximately 8 foot long, cylindrical shaped with an inside diameter of 4.5 feet. The hull was constructed with 5 inches of carbon fiber wound filament, which consisted 5 layers of carbon fiber glued together, with each layer approximately 1 inch thick. The carbon fiber pressure hull was glued fore and aft to the grade 3 titanium segments, aka rings, which were then bolted forward to the aft and end of grade 3 titanium domes. And no, some of the description down here. Basically, these things are normally built with either out of steel or titanium. Carbon fiber, no, for whatever reason, was at this point was never certified. Could never be, and there was some questions to the science and everything else. For whatever reason, it made sense to them at the time to make this out of carbon fiber, maybe to sound more exotic. And yeah, some more pictures here. All right, we're not going to go through every thing. I'm just going through the right. And it goes through background information. This is how this needs to be done. If you're going to be doing a accident report, go to one of these accident reports and you will see what's going on. Here, all the background information. We're going to get on down to the nitty gritty. All right. So here we have a timeline. Here, this is what I'm scrolling through here. So it's always good that when you are dealing with an accident to have a timeline, right? For a whole host of reasons. You have a situation and where oftentimes in the heat of the moment, memories fail. And when memories fail, you can have a problem. I always talk, not always, but it's been a while, but where I was involved in an emergency where the shop steward said that it took an hour and a half to 2 hours for emergency services to get to the injured person. And I had a person, and I said, you are the note taker, and I said, you got a watch? Or now I would say, you got a phone? I said, yeah, well, now I want you to write down time by time how long it takes for this, and this to happen. And then when we did the whole discussion, it took 2 hours for that guy, hour and a half, and by the time everybody got through, I said, okay, Dave, can you read off the timeline? And he had a big smile on, and he read off the timeline. And basically, what did it come down to? The people who were not there, who came up with this timeline of their own, looked like fools. Now, it wasn't my intention to make them look like fools. But the idea was that you're not being told the truth. Whoever is telling you it took an hour and a half or 2 hours for EMTs to get there, not the truth. It took about 20 minutes, which it was in line and consistent with all the other emergencies in the area. And here we have the whole timeline here with this. Going through, and basically it imploded. Now, at 10:47:11 a.m., the Titanium Communications tracking team, while in the chart room in the aft section of Polar Prince Bridge, Polar Prince was the support vessel, heard a sound described by the leader of the communications tracking as a bang. Upon hearing the news, the leader turned to another employee assisting with the comms and tracking and said, "What was that bang?" The assistant did not respond to the question, and MVI was unable to find evidence of any further discussions of the bang heard on the bridge. When asked by the MVI, right, if the master and the Polar Prince had heard or felt anything around the time of the loss of communications, master provided the following written response. With the benefit of hindsight, meaning hindsight bias, right? I now believe I felt the Polar Prince shudder at around the time communications were reportedly lost. But at the time we thought nothing of it. It was slight, right? And what happened, what added to the confusion was this. The MVI determined, Marine Board of Investigation, determined that the text transmissions between the Titan and the Polar Prince had approximately 15 to 30 second delay from when the Titan sent the message to when it was received. So what happened was, on the radio, they heard the bang, and then about 15 to 30 seconds later, they got a text message. So this led the team and everybody to believe that that this was something else at the time, that people were still alive there. Right? At approximately 2 minutes after hearing the bang, an OceanGate employee assisting with comms and tracking pointed to the tracking computer, so we have lost tracking. The team leader for the communications tracking team then stated for 2 minutes. The loss of tracking time corresponds to the time bang the sound was heard. The OceanGate communications and tracking team then sent several messages to the Titan saying lost tracking and requested the Titan's crew increase power to the Evo logistics modem. There were no further responses from Titan here. According to the mission director, OceanGate personnel on board the Polar Prince followed the miscommunications protocol outlined in the OceanGate HSE manual, which stated the following: 50-minute communications check missed, 30-minute communications check missed, note as lost comms, 45-minute communication check missed, note as lost sub. Additional 15 minutes will be given for appropriate action to be taken. So they had a thing here, and again, I'm not going to read every word here. And this is some other information and some background and regulatory background, and because they had to establish who has jurisdiction here. Now, let's go to section 5, where it gets very interesting and exciting. Right? Right? And they did models and everything else, and you can read this for technical details on why it failed. That's not what our right here. Now, there was a termination here of essentially a quality control. The report included a detailed quality. They were talking about a report. These concerns are not theoretical. The Director of Marine Operations believed that they could pose a significant risk to personnel if left unaddressed. The report was an official record that highlighted the necessary corrective actions to ensure the submersible's safety during missions. So there were safety indicators. According to the Director of Operations, his intention was to provide OceanGate with a clear and documented account of the issues that needed attention before any other operations could take place. His emphasis was on ensuring that the submersible was safe to operate, right, and reflecting on primary concern for the well-being of the crew. On January 19, 1928, the Director of Marine Operations met with Mr. Rush. Again, this is 5 years before this happened. The Director of Engineering, a Human Resources representative, COO, for a 2-hour meeting. During the meeting, the Director of Marine Operations argued for additional testing. Although the meeting was crucial to ensuring safe operations of the new Titan submersible, there was no formal response or any subsequent actions taken by the CEO or OceanGate in response to the inspection report. The Director of Operations' recommendations, however, met with strong resistance and disdain from OceanGate's CEO. Following the meeting, Mr. Rush, that is, it became clear to Mr. Rush that he and the Director of Marine Operations were at an impasse regarding how to move forward with the submersible's development, and he notified the Director of Operations that he would likely be fired. The meeting lasted 2 hours. So on the 23rd, a couple of days later, they fired the Director of Operations. Now, what happened was he, being the Director of Operations, had filed a whistleblower complaint, right, against OceanGate. Well, guess what? Right? An OSHA investigator emailed a U.S. Coast Guard representative that previously had the collateral duty and responsibility for monitoring SPA, that's for the seamen, right? Claims regarding retaliation against OceanGate. Post-casualty digital forensics conducted by the Coast Guard at the request of the MBI determined this email was not received by the member and therefore was not forwarded to the new member of the monitor for the Coast Guard monitoring ocean cases. So essentially, the email got lost in cyberspace and went to an invalid email address, apparently, and got dropped. And in the meantime, there was litigation, and the indication was OSHA wasn't interested in this because there's time limits on this. And the OSHA investigator said, well, they did find out there was a backlog and everything else. So what's the moral of the story here for us at Safety Wars? If you are filing a whistleblower complaint, you got to follow it up. You got to get off your rear end, walk on over to a landline phone, and call OSHA and say what the bleep is going on. You do not rely on email. When I have to send out an important email, what does Jimmy do? Jimmy goes out there and follows it up with either a text, a phone call, an in-person, hey, did you get that? Whatever. So please, when you're communicating with these agencies, make sure that you follow up with that. I'm not blaming the victim. I'm blaming the people involved and the system involved. Now, this goes down, and they, right, and what possibly happened here is that it was 2018. They had been working with us on and off, right, until the accident, and success, they figure, well, it's success. We're not going to worry about anything, and we're doing good now. Nothing did happen, so therefore we're not going to worry about it, blah, 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 blah. I'm sure we've all heard that. And I am coming down. We're getting down to the big one here. Chapter 5. Where are you, Chapter 5? So, there are incidents. They didn't file incident reports. They didn't do analysis. They said, don't worry about it. All right. So, I'm going through here. I'm not sharing this because I lost the spot here. All right. Here it was. OceanGate's toxic safety culture. And we're going to reference the Canadian report, which I already have ready to go here. OceanGate's operational and safety practices were critically flawed, which contributed to the catastrophic implosion of the Titan submersible. At the core of these failures was a disconnect between the company's stated safety protocols and its actual practices. While OceanGate's 155-page HSE manual was ostensibly intended to guide high-risk operations, its substance and practical application were woefully inadequate. Only 4 pages of the manual addressed dive-specific safety procedures, a substantial shortfall for a company centered on deep-sea manned submersible operations. This highlighted systemic issues where submersible safety protocols were either egregiously inadequate or willfully disregarded, leaving critical risk unmitigated. Analysis reveals a disturbing pattern of misrepresentation and reckless disregard for safety in OceanGate's operation of the Titan submersible, with Mr. Rush seemingly using inflated numbers to bolster the perceived safety and dive count of the final Titan hull. OceanGate's cumulative dive count for the Titan was intentionally misleading by including 49 dives of the scrapped original hull. They artificially inflated the operational experience of the final Titan hull, obscuring the fact that the final hull had undergone a severely limited number of dive tests, only 11 reaching a maximum depth of 170 meters before being used for deep-sea passenger voyages at the wreck at 3,840 meters. This deliberate manipulation of data created a false impression of submersible's proven reliability and safety, and crucially, this misrepresentation provided an inflated sense of safety and security to mission specialists. The limited testing of the final Titan hull directly contradicts any claims of rigorous validation. A mere 11 operational dives at shallow depths is woefully inadequate to assess its structural integrity and long-term performance, going on and on. Compounding these issues, the company's leadership structure concentrated virtually all decision-making power in the hands of its CEO, Mr. Rush. Although OceanGate had a board of directors, Mr. Rush's dominant behavior rendered it largely ineffective. MVI witnesses described board meetings as informational, with Mr. Rush showcasing accomplishments and dictating decisions. MVI determined that OceanGate's board of directors, despite the appearance of diverse expertise, again, there we go, diverse, and we have to be diverse, in practice, functioned primarily as a figurehead to add credibility to OceanGate's operations. The inclusion of a retired U.S. Coast Guard admiral to help ensure regulatory compliance was disingenuous, as a retired admiral confirmed during the MBI interview he had no marine safety background or experience when he was added to the board. The retired USCG admiral couched the board's role as strategic-based, and he confirmed that Mr. Rush was not a person who sought, to the best of my recollection, this is a quote, a lot of input from members of the board or direction. It was mostly from Stockton. This is the plan, this is the way we're going to go, and the board would discuss the question, comment on, let's say, the way ahead. Overall, the MBI believes Mr. Rush deliberately sidelined OceanGate's board and did not solicit its collective experience, and I'll add this, although very limited, so he could proceed unchecked with his vision to conduct expeditions, regardless of any safety concerns. Again, he in an interview, he was like, oh, well, at risk, there's always risk. Then don't get out of bed if there's risk, right? A prime example of Mr. Rush's disregard for opposing views from his senior staff was evident during his meeting with the Director of Operations on January 19, 2018. Right after the Director of Operations made the point that OceanGate had hired him to take a conservative approach to safety, aka this was the devil's advocate, Mr. Rush made the following statement to the group assembled from the meeting, quote, "That's why we hired the Director of Operations, you know. It is for that level of detail and safety approach to it was the primary attraction to bringing the Director of Operations on board. And now we've gotten to the point where his expertise and his estimation of a correct way to do this is fundamentally opposite of the approach that I want to take." Earlier in the conversation, Mr. Rush made the statement that he would not force people to join his religion if they were opposed and held opposite views. When considering that the Director of Operations was fired shortly after the meeting with Rush, the message was clear to OceanGate's remaining senior staff that opposing views needed to be stifled. And it goes on and on and on. Examples of the CEO's disdain for traditional submersible safety protocols were abundant. For example, in one incident, Mr. Rush opted to use only 4 bolts to secure the 3,500-pound forward dome to the submersible because it took less time, despite the design requiring 18 bolts. The Director of Engineering at the time raised concerns over the reduced bolts when was ignored. This shortcut became an issue during the 2021 Titanic dive. While being hoisted onto the Horizon Arctic's aft deck, the Titan suffered a catastrophic failure. The forward dome's bolts sheared as it transitioned from the ramp to a horizontal surface, causing the dome to detach and fall onto the Lars platform. Right? In 2017, U.S. Coast Guard Reserve Petty Officer employed by OceanGate warned the company's front office about regulatory noncompliance. Mr. Rush reportedly responded to the concerns with hostility, and the U.S. Coast Guard Petty Officer claimed Mr. Rush told him he could, quote, buy a congressman, end quote, if the USGS and USCG ever became a problem for his Titan operations. In 2022, a contractor hired by OceanGate raised safety concerns about navigation system and the way that the navigation system was being utilized to track and communicate Titan, right? And it goes on and on and on. And he was told, let's see, does this sound familiar if you're a safety person? You have a bad attitude and you don't have an explorer mindset. You know, we're innovative and we're cowboys. A lot of people can't handle that. The contractor who voiced the concerns was subsequently sent home from the Titanic survey expedition 2022 prior to the expiration of her contract. The employee's firing sent a clear message that raising legitimate safety concerns, as encouraged in an excerpt from the SAC included, was only blah, 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 often led to the employee's termination. So what does it say? It's allegedly right from the HSE manual. Employees are required to comply with all company safety rules and are encouraged to actively participate in identifying ways to make our company a safer place to work. Guess what? Didn't do it, according to this report. All these systemic failures escalated. OceanGate's management remained unyielding and increased their disregard for safety. Decisions were made unilaterally at the top, with Mr. Rush bypassing established protocols and ignoring the concerns of other experienced employees and contractors. Rush was essentially OceanGate's CEO, safety officer, and primary submersible pilot, which enabled him to set safety parameters and then make all final decisions for Titan operations without adequate input or checks and balances from board of directors. Now here's the whole thing. Had OceanGate adhered to safety standards outlined in its own manual and fostered a culture of transparency and accountability, this tragedy likely would have been averted with the final Titan hull removed from service well ahead of its implosion. Encouraging employees to voice concerns without fear of retaliation and prioritizing safety over expediency could have prevented the sequence of events that led to the disaster. Instead, the company's systemic failures created an environment where risks were ignored and consequences were inevitable. Deep-rooted flaws in the failure to prioritize safety from deep-rooted flaws in its leadership, structure, culture, and operational practices. It was clear during MBI's investigation that OceanGate's CEO exerted full control over every facet of the company's operation and engineering decisions. Right? With this. And it goes on and on and on and on and on. Corporate culture. There was an absence of a designated director of safety and mismanagement of risks. Right? Lack of formal private pilot training. Failure to properly troubleshoot hull after acoustic events and safety culture related to the operation of Titan. Choosing to ignore warnings, accepting risk. All this is not now. It seems to say, look back in our own hindsight and say, well, what? Wow, blah, 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 idiot, this, that, the other thing. My question is this. How does your organization operate this way? This is why we have this program. One of the reasons why. Safety Wars, Safety FM, the other programs here. Safety professionals get off your knees. We weren't meant to beg, we were meant to lead. As the song goes. With that. Here, another one. Misrepresentation of paying passengers as mission specialists. With that. Again, it was a funding issue, and hey, guess what? We're not carrying passengers. But it was all that. And then what we have, U.S. Coast Guard's inability to execute subsea search and rescue, despite a 7-hour initial notification delay dictated by OceanGate's communications plan, and the added, right? So that's called duck and cover. So no, wait 7 hours. This is why you have the 8-hour thing with OSHA to notify OSHA for a fatality. Here we have 7-hour notification delay. This means that they were trying to get their eggs in a row here, right? Get everything all this one. The Coast Guard's unwavering commitment to its SAR's operating philosophy drove relentless pursuit of all available resources until all hope of rescue was exhausted. Right? And it goes on. So the conclusions, and you can read determination of cause. Again, failure of the hull, right? Organization culture, particularly Mr. Rush, right? Fostered a misrepresentation of safety, financial pressures, the only saving grace here was that basically everyone died instantly. Unfortunately, they got, and I think I reported on this because one of the families came out with a book. They basically handed them a thing of mush from the people that died. Right? Again, violation of had Mr. Rush survived the casualty while serving as a master to tighten the MBI would have recommended that Commandant initiate administrative action seeking the revocation of the Mr. Rush's MMC maritime credentials. Those are right. First, he served as a master and passenger carrying submersible operating outside U.S. inland waters without the vessel being properly certified as a small passenger vessel under applicable U.S. law, so he was out of their jurisdiction. Mr. Rush's actions constituted misconduct and fell outside the legal scope of his credentialed authority. Right? And so basically, out of sight, out of mind. And again, they need better oversight. Now, the Canadian report goes about this a little bit differently. Here. Effective risk management, 121. Effective risk management is an ongoing process involving individuals at all levels of an organization. And again, these reports are phenomenal to read because you get your phraseology here. Wouldn't this be nice to put in one of your own reports or plans? Effective risk, hey, we are safety professionals, we steal everything. Effective risk management is an ongoing process involving individuals at all levels of an organization. It entails identifying hazards, analyzing and evaluating the risk associated with those hazards, and putting mitigating measures in place to reduce risk. Phenomenal statement there. Given that operational risks are not static but emerge and change over time, it is crucial that risk assessments be regularly evaluated and updated in order to address new hazards or identify existing hazards that may have been initially overlooked. It is also important that any mitigating measures put in place are monitored for effectiveness. Wow, that's a safety meeting, isn't it? Right? So in your next safety meeting, that would be a great thing to put in there. Social construction of safety risk. Safety risk is commonly defined as a quantification expressed in terms of predicted probability of severity of the potential consequences of a hazard, taking as a reference the worst foreseeable but credible situation. Whether through formal or informal assessment, this is your hazard risk table matrix. Any organization operating in a high-risk safety-critical industry is trying to understand and manage the risk inherent in its operations at any given time to avoid a potential accident. One of the main challenges is accurately assessing risk for a given operational context. Involves the inputs to the risk assessment process. Risk is not something that can be found, rather it is constructed by the individuals involved in the risk assessment process. When multiple people are involved in the process, it becomes evident that risk is an inherently social construct, subject to discussion and disagreement just like any organizational issue. This makes the determination of risk susceptible to various influences and cognitive biases that exist for other similar decision-making situations. Important in developing a robust and accurate understanding of the organization's risk is including in the process experienced and knowledgeable individuals with different areas of expertise. Doing so helps to counteract the influence of potential decision-making errors. Wow! Who said that? Sidney Dekker. Right? Sidney Dekker, Anton, Safety Culture Theory, Method, and Practice. You should know Sidney Dekker if you listen to us here. A primary driver of this phenomenon, so groupthink, affects groupthink on risk perception. Groupthink, and this is the last, and then we're going to break here. Groupthink describes how the informational desire and pressure for harmony within a team can lead to consensus-based decisions that minimize consideration of other options as a result of an absence of critical objective evaluation. A primary driver of this phenomenon is a lack of conflicting viewpoints within a team. Some characteristics that suggest a team is being affected by groupthink include overestimation of the team's power. The team may have an illusion of invulnerability shared by most or all of the team members, which creates excessive optimism and encourages taking risks. Closed-mindedness. The team may demonstrate collective efforts to rationalize in order to discount warnings or other information that might lead to the members to reconsider their assumptions, and pressures toward uniformity. The team may exert direct pressure on any members who express arguments against any of the group's stereotypes, solutions, or commitments. When group think affects risk assessment within an organization, the result may be a belief that risks have been adequately assessed and managed when in fact they have been explored only superficially. Ways to mitigate groupthink include prioritizing input from team members, expressing objections or doubts, being open and accepting of critical feedback to guide decisions, and seek out external expertise to challenge internal assumptions. For these mitigations to succeed, it is important that they be supported and demonstrated by leadership and encouraged at all levels of the organization. This is phenomenal. Here. And it goes on and on and on. With this, and basically this is what comes down to this. Yeah, this is about a maritime thing. But why do we read this? One, we have verbiage now. Number two, this gives us a lot of insight onto what happened here. And now how could this happen inside our organization? Power and safety cultures. So tomorrow, I have a safety meeting with somebody. And we're going to be talking about that here. With this phenomenal thing, we're going to talk about more about this. So we're out of time. And for Safety Worse and Safety FM, this is Jim Posel here. Oh, and by the way, it was great today where I met one of our listeners inadvertently. I walk into a restaurant for lunch that I never go to, but I was in the mood for some halfway decent food. And lo and behold, Jim Posel, how are you doing? Right? Safety Wars. Oh, yeah, that's me. Yeah, my 15 minutes of fame. Again, we had a nice discussion on safety and everything else. And we also had a mutual acquaintance here that I haven't talked about here, but one day I will speak about it. And it's going to be a long time from now. I assure you that, but we'll be talking about it. So thanks a lot for listening, and I look forward to seeing you possibly over the weekend. I always say that, but definitely next week.
The views and opinions expressed on this podcast are those of the host and its guest and do not necessarily reflect the official policy or position of the company. Examples of analysis discussed within this podcast are only examples. They should not be utilized in the real world as the only solution available, as they are based only on very limited and dated open source information. Assumptions made within this analysis are not reflective of the position of the company. No part of this podcast may be reproduced, stored in a retrieval system, or transmitted in any form or by any means, mechanical, electronic, recording, or otherwise, without prior written permission of the creator of the podcast, Jay Allen.